Hi, this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. Kitchen time, but this is more, apart from ant killing, maintenance, and it's beer time. That's a rare event. I don't drink beer much because it's fizzy and it has an effect. Basically, this was mounted not that long ago. This is the polybulbum. And I just want to do a bit of maintenance on it because I've got two growths here that are growing outwards from the mount. Yeah. So all I want to do with these is just clip them back so that the roots can attach, and they'll be easier to hydrate that way. And that way, these growths will progress up the mount instead of out into space, basically. And I'll take the opportunity of getting a little bit more moss in this area for those roots. I mean, the rest of it's fine. It's growing on okay. There's new growths pushing out in many places. It's branched in quite a few places, so it is bushing up nicely. I don't know how long it'll be before it blooms again. If you have a look at a lot of the older growths, where's my camera? Make sure I'm on. These are where the blooms were, yeah? So a lot of these older growths have already bloomed. They won't bloom again. So I'm relying on new growths pushing on, like that one with the sheath, yeah? But I just want to clip those two back. So that's one job, very simple. This is the other one. I want to get the smaller ones out of the way so that I can deal with the big one. This is a long cane, basically. This is Dendrobium aphyllum. It's got a lovely new growth coming on it, just the one, but all I received from Alberto was a single cane kiki, yeah? And it did bloom, surprisingly, just on that single kiki cane, basically. I mean, that is a hell of a kiki. You know, it's 1.5 feet long. That's quite a kiki. But what it has done is grown a new kiki down the base of the plant on that older cane that's already bloomed. I don't want that there, so I'm going to take that kiki off and bring it up here to the base of the mount. And again, while I'm doing a bit of maintenance and getting that kiki to attach, I'll take the ties off because the main plant's well attached now. Because I want to tuck the kiki into there, into that space, and the ties are in the way. So I will take advantage of the fact that the ties are coming off to put a little bit of moss over this area, because the main plant has pushed out a lovely new root system right up through the moss, out to the top of the bark. Yeah, some of the older roots are branching, so it's producing a very good root system, but this is bare rooted. So to help it grow on, I'd like to get a little bit of moss over the surface of these roots, plus get the kiki set up. So that's that one. Get that out of the way. And the next one is my Hercoglossum. And as you know, I was playing around testing the runoff through pots while I was sharing water. And I discovered that pH is increasing quite dramatically as it goes through the number of pots, depending on the media. But purely by chance, this moss has been on here a hell of a long time, and I've just noticed that roots are not doing very well. I suspect this moss is incredibly acidic. It's been there ages, and this has never had an extensive root system, despite the fact it supports a very large plant. Oh, I've just noticed some buds. I wasn't expecting, it's just gone out of bloom, it's just finished. I wasn't expecting to see any more blooms this year. I'll bet there's some more if I look. Yeah, there's some down here. So we will get some more blooms. And the fact that that's got some buds on, it makes no difference to this operation. The reason I'm going at it now is this. I have a lot of new growth starting, plus immature canes here that need to grow on. Now's the time, if any, that it will produce a new root system, and I want that root system into something other than totally broken down moss. So I need to get this one right off the mount. And it was wired on which probably means I'll have to rewire it and not tie it, because it is quite a large plant, it is quite substantial, and the fishing line may not hold it in place. So yeah, I'll get the gear to rewire this. I'll do this one first. I'll be back. Okay, first job is to get it off the mount. So making sure I don't bend any canes or damage any new growths. Slightly on its side so it's not pressing on those new growths. Get the wire cut that's already on there. That should make getting it off a little easier. I'm hoping it's going to come off reasonably well. But this has been on there so long that I know I would have put the plant on top of the moss. So there's going to be moss underneath the root system. But I don't think this root system is going to be that good. Let's get my wires out of the way. Let's get hold of the main base of the plant. Let's see if I can lift it gently. Look. Not that gently. Nonetheless, the top part of this is coming off reasonably easy. Now what have we got? I have lost some root tips. You can see the white on there. I hope. Where's my camera? Yeah? Well, those were actively growing roots. Now that's gonna, I want to reuse the same mount because it suits the plant, but I need to give that a good clean up. There's quite a bit of debris in the crevices and that, so I'll give that a good wash off. What I do to clean up an old mount like that is I've got a really stiff toothbrush and I just run it under the tap and scrub it with the toothbrush, and then I'll re-sterilise it with boiling water and I can use it again because it's the right size for the plant. Now let's see what we've got. Very solid base to the base of the plant. I have got some white root tips in here which I don't want to damage now because I've already lost some. I don't want to lose loads. I don't mind losing a few taking a plant off the mount. I'm just going to flip it. There's a distinct pong of mushrooms, so the moss was definitely going, and this solid base, you can see where the roots detach from the mount. This needs a good flush under the tap because this bit here is quite solid and I don't want to tease it out with my fingers and break those roots. So I'm going to run that under the tap with great difficulty because of the size of the plant basically. So let me just get that out of the way. Just rest that in the sink for now. Right, I'm going to do that one last. Now we've had a look, I just want to get these bits out of the way and get them back in the grow room. So this one's nice and easy. I just need a little bit of moss, not a lot, not a lot. Just for that little set of roots, just that tiny little set of roots at the top there that are going to grow on. So make sure I don't get, hang on, am I on shot here? Yes, somewhere near it. I'm just going to put a little bit there. I want the moss on top of the plant, but obviously I don't want to bury the new growths. Just want to give them some help. So that's the moss in place. Oh, left my towel in the grow room. I'll be back. Sorry about that. Talk about lack of preparation. Left me towel. I can't be doing with mucking around with fishing line with wet hands. It just sticks, and then it won't go where you want. Now I should probably only need to go round twice, but I'll make sure I've got enough rather than not enough. Not enough causes problems, too much is a small amount of waste. Which, with a reel full like that, I think I can afford it. My youngest son used to do fishing. You know, he used to actually go fishing, so he did have an awful lot of equipment. And when he got rid of it all, when he went off to university, I said, what are you doing with that lot? He said, I'm giving it away. I said, well, you can give that fishing line to me. I know what I can use that for. So, great big wodge of fishing line that will probably last longer than I will, because there's stacks of it. Now this is one instance where I don't want to get the loop on first before you start, because the loop is probably all I'll need. Alright, let's get that on and pull that tight, or tight-ish. I don't want to go too tight, because I've just noticed I've caught a new growth underneath the moss. I need that out before I go round again. Right, any more hooked up? Nope, that's it. So that's my first turn, and I'm just going to go round once more just to secure the base of those two. And all I need to do is tie that off. Oh, I've got far too much here. I thought I would have. That may do in a minute, rather than waste it. And just tie that off. And then, because that just seems a little bit loose to me, I'm just going to go round one of the other loops and just tie again, so that I get a bit of purchase on those two loops. Just use one of the other loops that's already there, and then just pull again, and I'll just tighten them up. Something like that. There we go. That's that little job done. I've been looking at that job for ages, thinking I must get on and do that. So that's better. Now these two growths, the roots are in the moss. They are now pressed against the bark. They will attach. They've been told. And they're now flat against the mount. So as they project upwards, the roots will be against the mount. So that's that little job done. So I'm just making sure the moss isn't burying any of the other growths below. That's the one I was worried about. Just about. Poke its nose out. If it gets on and grows, then it won't be under the moss. Right, that's that little job done. Let's get that out of the way. This is the next one. It's another easy one. Now, as I said, this has got a nice strong new growth growing this year, and now has an extensive root system. I'm going to take the ties off. Am I going to take all the ties off? No. I wonder if I can get away with... I only want to take the bottom ties off, I don't want to take the lot off. So if I follow that one round and cut that one on its own, and then just retie that one, that way the others should just come off. This might not work, but it's got to be worth a try. Fiddly. You see what I mean? Trying to do this sort of thing with wet hands just is not possible. All you do is stick the stuff to you, and then your hands get everything else wet and it sticks to that as well. Come on, get in there. Thank you. Right, that's that. Now I'm hoping that this will come off without everything falling apart. Well, it came off and everything else is tied. So, yep, so I've released the ties in this area, which is what I wanted to do. Now we'll twist the kiki off. This is a nice kiki, and I've been watering this, so every time I've watered the mount, I've poured water over the kiki. Oh, that's quite loose, that's quite good. Good, very little attachment to the main mount. Okay, so I have been acclimatising these roots. I mean, strictly speaking, I could take that old cane off, but you know, it looks like there's a bud there. Hopefully another kiki, because it is, you know, it is a youngish plant, shall we say. Now that's going to go upside down, so that it's already heading in the right direction. This will be a good experiment. Can I get that kiki to bloom? I think it's just a bit small. So I want that about there, pointing downwards, and I want a little bit of moss around that area. And I doubt if that's going to be anywhere near enough. Look, another piece then, won't we? I don't want loads, because remember, this is going to have a winter rest. So if you've got loads and loads of moss, it makes it very difficult to control little small amounts of water to stop the canes desiccating, because it's very easy to dribble a bit too much on your moss, and then suddenly, because the temperatures are low and it's winter, it's far too wet when it's supposed to be having a dryish winter rest. So you need to go careful with the amount of moss on these types. That's why if you look at the top of the mount, there's very little moss. There's only a tiny little bit there. Most of this is roots. Yeah, and that's the reason. Any winter rest mounts that I've got do not have a lot of moss. The Hercoglossum had a fair bit of moss. That's not a resting type, even though some places say it is. Well, I've never rested it, and I get mass bloomings every year on and on and on. So if it's not broke, don't fix it. And that one certainly grows well for me and blooms well for me. With the treatment it's always had. What's the point in changing something if it's working well? No point at all. Alright, so this is just a matter of, all I'm doing now is securing the moss. There's certainly no reason to secure the plant. I need to secure the kiki, obviously, but the main plant is already well attached to the mount. I just need a loop round to actually get the kiki on. This is going to be fun, isn't it? Well, because the kiki's not tied, I'm going to bring my loop over the top, which means going over my cane, and then over the hook, and over the top of the mount to get down to where I want to be, which is somewhere about there-ish. Somewhere about there. Looks good. Looks good. And now I'm pulling the wrong end, and my loop's getting bigger instead of smaller. That's better. Helps if you pull your right end. Let's get that reasonably tight. Then I need to go round again to make sure that kiki's well locked in place. There's no weight to it, you know, it's a tiny little kiki relative to the size of the plant, but I don't want it waggling and loose. I mean, I've actually had one plant so far that I thought was well tied on. It was two plants on the same mount, and one of them just didn't grip. Even though I wired it, it just didn't grip, and the whole plant just fell out. I went in one morning and it was on the floor. And it's funny actually, I didn't notice it on the floor. What I noticed was the plant only looked half the size it should be. And then I realised that's because the other half was on the floor. It just didn't grip. And that's the first time that's ever happened to me with wire. But yeah, it just slipped out and I had to redo it, which was a nuisance. Butterfingers. That's before I finish the beer. Felt sorry for my sister and brother-in-law last night. It's my sister's birthday yesterday, and I wrote a very special message on her card. I said, how on earth did you manage to get England to play a semi-final in the World Cup for your birthday? She thought was amusing. But I feel sorry for people that are nuts on their football and everything, and their country, you know, playing in such an important event, and then they go and lose. But they got there, more than they've done for many a year. So look at the good side, at least they were in the semi-final. And there were lots of teams this year that normally are in the semi-finals and the finals that got knocked out. So it's been an unusual World Cup this year. That's about as much as my interest goes, quite honestly. But I did try and watch the game. I fell asleep and missed some of it, and saw some of it, and saw the end. But, right. It should be okay, and it should have gripped the kiki okay. Yeah, it's not tight, but that's growing roots at the moment. That's going to attach. only just gripping that. It's because I've put it in that recess. Anyway, we'll see how it goes. If it falls out, I'll have to do it again, won't I? Should be okay, we shall see. Let's get that one out of the way then. And now I'll have to get under the tap and everything and clean that Herco Blossom to get that in a state where I can remount it, re-sterilise the mount and everything. So I'll be back. Alright, that was fun. Not really cleaning up the base, because the base of the plant is like a solid piece of wood. You know, where all the base of the canes are all sort of knotted together. So that wasn't too bad. And most of the moss has come off. There is a tiny little bit in the centre there, but that's where all the new root growth is. So I don't want to go too mad there. What was hard work was the piece of bark. This bark has broken down. That's the first time that's ever happened to me with cork bark. Now I've tried like carving the surface off to get back to some good bark like this, which is not bad, but it still feels incredibly soft. So I was thinking of just dumping it and getting another piece, and then I thought I haven't actually got a lot of new cork bark basically. Could have got some of that at Burnham's, they had some smashing pieces, but I didn't think I needed any. But I've had a brainwave and I've never done this before. There's nothing wrong with that. Nothing at all wrong with that. That is solid and it's gnarly enough for roots to get hold of. I don't see anything wrong with using the back of a piece of bark. If anybody's had some bad experiences doing this, I doubt if anybody else has done it, but that's what I'm going to do. I mean, the only thing to do is to just turn the hook round the other way and I've got a perfectly good mount. And this is solid stuff. There's nothing soft, soggy or dirty about this, nothing at all. I haven't sterilised it yet, I just need to do that, but I thought I'd discuss that. This really is soft, and these darker pieces here are just rotten. So I daren't put the roots against that and then, you know, remount it on that. That would just be silly. That would be, you know, asking for trouble. I had a look at my notes. This was mounted in May 2014. It's been on there far too long. And that may explain why it hasn't got an extensive root system. Hopefully it will now get one. It's still got a good bit of the growing season to grow on, you know, with decent day lengths and everything. And this is not a dendrobium that stops growing in the winter. It carries on growing. Well, if the plant's carrying on growing, I see no reason why the roots won't do the same. So I just need to sterilise that and then we'll strap it on. Okay, I've taken advantage of, while I was waiting for the kettle to boil, to take off a few old canes and trim all the old dead flower spikes off, which make the plant look incredibly tatty. You can imagine all that lot just hanging off the plant. I don't think I did that last year. I left them on. The idea being that they drop off on their own. Well, they don't. They just turn into sticks and hang on there. So I've trimmed all those off and I've had a look round. There's 11 buds to come. That's nice, because I wasn't expecting any more blooms on that this year. There's only 4 canes came off. They've bloomed in every possible place and dropped all their leaves, so they're serving no purpose, and with a plant that big, they serve no purpose, seriously. It's not like they're storing up energy for the plant, it's got more than enough. So that's that tidied up, and now we do the experiment and plant on the back of a piece of cork bark. Never done that before, but first time for everything, as they say. Right, this plant has a top and a bottom, and also has a back and a front. Obviously there's no point in putting that against the bark. Where am I? Where's the camera? Because all the new growths are coming out here. It has a natural back where it came off the bark. And there are lots of white roots here, many of which have been damaged, but it's a branching root system. And I've got a feeling that the root system was being stunted by acidic moss and a piece of wood that was breaking down, all be the fact that it was cork bark. Now most of the roots are, so I'm desperately trying to watch what the camera's doing instead of just what I'm doing. Most of the roots are pointing upwards and outwards, so it naturally needs to go quite near the base of the mount, giving these roots, which are active and pretty healthy, pointing upwards, so they've got plenty of room to expand. Yeah, so that's where it's going to go, and it's actually going to get a fair bit of moss, bearing in mind now the moss is on the top. Actually, I think before I put the moss on, I'm going to get a loop of wire around, otherwise it's only going to flop around and fall off. Where did I put my piece of wire? Now this is where you poke your eye out when you've got a piece of wire that's over 1 metre long and you're trying to look at what you're doing with the moss and not looking at where the wire is. Now I'm going to go under that new growth and under that cane so that I can pull tight on the hard base of the mount where there's no new growths, and that will hold the whole plant absolutely rigid while I do the rest of the stuff. And the beauty of a piece of wire, making sure I've got a long enough piece round the back to tie off eventually, if you can call it tying, is that once I hook that round the mount, I can pull that tight. Because it's wire, it's not going to give in, and that's it. Oops. Complete with cane. That's now already firm, and that's just one piece of wire round. I've still got plenty more wire to turn if I don't poke my eye out. Right, so let's get some moss on. Now, although I've just put that wire there, which is now in my way, I will want to tuck some down the side, because I believe these roots are going to come out in all directions now, and I need them to get into enough to keep them hydrated, that's all. So I'm hoping these are really going to attach well. But as I've said, this isn't a winter resting type. It doesn't get watered anywhere near as much in the winter, but I don't dry it off completely for any length of time like I do some of the other dendrobiums, because it doesn't stop growing, and to dry it off for any length of time would inhibit that winter growth, albeit slow growth, yes, but it is nonetheless growth. It's going on. If it's going on, obviously it still needs water and some feed. So this one even gets fed in the winter. Not a lot, but it's ticking over. It's still extending the canes despite the short days and everything else that goes on in the lovely UK winter. All that lovely rain, like what we could do with right now. Supposed to be cloudy with some possible showers today. Well, so far it's been sunny all day. So that didn't work, did it? Right, so that's a reasonable amount of moss over the area where those roots are. Now all I've got to do is wrap the wire around, hold it in place and not trap any of those little new growths. The base of the plant's already held tight, I don't need to worry about that. So we'll go round about there and tuck underneath canes and new growths carefully. You pull a wire tight on a new growth, it will go blip and it's gone. You know, another turn and I'll be away from the new growths, and then I'm just holding those few roots that were extending up, and the moss obviously. There we go, that's it. That's all it needs. And we come over the back, find our previous end. So I'm going to tuck that in there so that it doesn't pull itself up the side of the mount as I try and pull it tight. That will help hold it in place. And then as tight as I can by hand. And then I'll get the pliers on that and just pull it a little tighter. It's just a matter of pulling it away from the mount and then twisting, and the twist will pull it down towards the mount. everything's nice and tight. And goodness knows what happened to my tag. It's a good job I know what it is, isn't it? Seriously, never going to forget what this one is, am I? But I will attach a tag at some point. I've got about probably 24 plants out in the grow room at the moment with no tags on, and I mean to get them done one day. Right, nice and tight, nice and firm, no movement whatsoever, and some moss that needs tucking in behind the wire. Now I can see where it is. There we go, and I suspect and hope by the end of this year I will see new roots poking out from this moss, attaching nicely to clean non-acidic bark through non-acidic moss. And I think that will grow on better than perhaps it has for the last year or two, because although it's been growing okay, I'm just casting my mind back, and I think there has been a bit of a slowing up of growth, and that's probably directly related to the root system not being as good as it once was. So anyway, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 new growths just starting, plus the new growths that started at the beginning of the year that are now, what, 8, 9 inches long. So this is a secondary flush of new growths, and these growths now should push on better than they were, because they weren't pushing on as fast as in previous years. So there we go, that's Dendrobium hercoglossum, in my opinion rejuvenated, and I think that should now take off far better than it's been doing for a little while. It's still been doing okay and it's still been blooming fine, but my age-old expression is it doing okay? Yes. Could it be doing any better? Well, in this case the answer is probably yes. And I've just noticed what looks like a couple more kikis coming. That's good, more plants for somebody else, as well as some buds. So that's that one done. Let's get that back in the grow room, suspended, and I shall await those white new roots pushing out onto that mount. Something I haven't seen for a while. It's been totally contained in that solid mass that I took off of the mount, and no roots have pushed out of there for some considerable time. So let's hope it pushes on a bit better now. Okay, thanks for dropping by. See you next time.